coughing, runny nose, fever. All of these are common symptoms of influenza. Influenza, known commonly as the flu, is a contagious respiratory virus. The influenza virus infects the nose, throat, and lungs. There are two main types of the flu virus, which are types A and B. The influenza virus is divided into two types, H or N, based on the proteins of the surface of the virus, hemagglutinin or neuraminidase. A global outbreak of a new influenza A virus is known as an influenza pandemic. Influenza A virus is found in many animals, while influenza B is only found in humans. Seasonal flu generally occurs during the fall and winter, which is known as flu season. Most people with the flu are contagious within the first 3 to 4 days after their illness starts. Generally, the influenza virus spreads through small droplets from someone with the flu coughing, sneezing, or talking, landing in the mouths or nose of other people. Less often, a person may contract the flu by touching a surface that has the influenza virus on it, then touching their mouth, nose, or eyes. People over the age of 65 and children under the age of 5 are most susceptible to getting the flu, as well as people with certain medical conditions, such as asthma, heart disease, and diabetes. The flu is typically mild to severe, but in some cases can be fatal. The symptoms of the flu usually come on suddenly. As previously mentioned, some of those symptoms include sore throat, fever, coughing, runny or stuffy nose, headaches, body aches, and tiredness. The flu is treated with flu antiviral drugs. However, some preventative measures can be taken, such as receiving the seasonal flu vaccine, staying away from sick people, and covering your mouth when coughing or sneezing. When exposed to the influenza virus, the immune system recognizes the antigens, the structures located on the surface of the virus, contained in the hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. The immune system creates specified antibodies that target those antigens. The flu virus invades the body through the binding of the protein hemagglutinin to sialic acid receptors on the surface of the host cell, allowing the virus to enter the cell through receptor-mediated endocytosis. The vesicle that the virus cell is within moves along microtubules of the cell using motor proteins. The RNA of the virus is released into the cytoplasm and is guided into the nucleus of the host cell. The virus RNA is transcribed by RNA polymerase, then translated by ribosomes in the cytoplasm into proteins. The proteins re-enter the nucleus and are combined with the viral RNA. The proteins in RNA travel to the surface of the cell to combine with viral surface proteins to be assembled into new virus cells. These new viral cells go on to infect more host cells. The influenza virus can go through two types of mutations, antigenic drift or antigenic shift. Mutations in the genes of influenza viruses that lead to changes in the surface proteins are called antigenic drift. Over time, these antigenic drift mutations can result in antigenically different viruses that the human body's antibodies cannot bind to, decreasing protection against that particular virus. Antigenic shift is when there is a sudden major change in an influenza A virus, producing a new H or N protein. It can cause a new subtype within influenza A viruses that can infect humans for the first time, an example of which is the 2009 H1N1 outbreak. Influenza A viruses can go through antigenic drift and antigenic shift, while influenza B is only known to go through antigenic drift and is not known to cause pandemics. In 1918, a deadly influenza pandemic broke out called the Spanish flu. It was caused by the H1N1 influenza virus with avian origin. The origin of the virus is debated, but it is spread from 1918 to 1919, and it is estimated that a third of the population at that time had contracted the virus. This pandemic had a high mortality rate in people under 5, over 65, and between 20 and 40, which is unique to this pandemic. At the time, vaccines and antibiotics were not available, so preventative intervention like quarantine, limited social gatherings, and disinfectants were used. Mortality worldwide ranged from 1 to 3% of the global population. In the 1930s, it is proven that influenza is caused by a virus and not bacteria. In the 1940s, the first inactive influenza vaccine is developed, and the influenza B virus is discovered. In 1957, the H2N2 influenza virus emerges, causing a pandemic. In 1968, a H3N2 virus emerges, causing a pandemic. In the 1970s, H1N1 outbreak leads to a vaccination program. The 2000s, the genome of the Spanish flu is sequenced. 2009, H1N1 pandemic begins. It was initially detected in the United States in the spring of 2009. The flu virus was named Influenza A H1N1 PDM09 and was very different from the other H1N1 viruses spreading around at that time. Most younger people did not have immunity from this virus, but almost a third of people over the age of 60 had antibodies, likely from a previous H1N1 virus. The mortality rate worldwide ranged from 0.001 to 0.007% of the global population during the first year.